I just think that's the vibe that I get.
Angry middle-aged men.
Criticising it, yeah. As if I can judge angry middle-aged men. It's effectively what I am as well. This is diversity for you on a panel, isn't it? Life gone well? Good weekend?
It's all right. Yeah, I've mostly been doing GBNews. The Free Speech Nation that's going out tomorrow. So if anybody's wondering why I'm wearing the same clothes on Free Speech Nation tomorrow, I'm not just scuzzy. I mean, I am scuzzy, but there's a reason this time.
Have you reached that level of celebrity like the royals who wore the same outfit twice? We wouldn't accept it from you. We'd be like, yeah, because, you know, it's a Sunday. TK Maxx is shut.
Yeah.
And if you see me tomorrow at the Battle of Ideas wearing the same clothes as today, it's because I'm sleeping in a bin out the back of GBNews. And this is how I live.
This is Zone 1, though, so this is like a good bin.
I've got a bin with a view.
Nice. Right, let's take a look at your front pages to begin with. The Observer goes with Reeves will tax businesses to plug £9 billion gap in NHS funds. The Mail on Sunday says, voters, we don't trust Labour with our money. The Sunday Telegraph, millions to be given NHS smartwatches. Sunday Times says leaked papers reveal chaos at heart of HS2. Is that still a thing? The Eye says income tax set to rise for millions past 2028. And the Sunday Mirror, I'm sorry I couldn't save you. And that's the front pages. So we start off with The Observer, Leo. What they got?
Yes, The Observer, which is what The Guardian's called on a Sunday, goes with Reeves will tax businesses to plug £9 billion gap in NHS funds. So this is another... I guess this is a smaller black hole. This is part of the bigger black hole that Reeves keeps talking about, that keeps getting bigger. But yeah, I mean, she promised she wouldn't tax income, but by taxing business, where do you think they're going to get the money from? They're going to get it from their employees. So you're essentially sort of taxing. All taxes have to be paid by somebody eventually. And
also, you say by somebody. There's only ever one type of person who can ever pay a tax.
Somebody who's earning.
Yeah, or just people. Yeah, I mean, like, eventually it all trickles down to us.
Yeah, and this is like, I mean, this is going to be a growth-destroying tax, like all taxes. I think when you come to the Laffer curve, which shows, you know, when you put taxes up too high, you actually reduce the amount of tax that the government takes because you've put the tax up too high so people try and find a way around it, or it just dissuades them from doing the work. I mean, they put a tax on cigarettes to stop you smoking cigarettes, make you smoke fewer cigarettes. They put a tax on, you know, sugary drinks to make you stop drinking sugary drinks. What do you think a tax on income does? What do you think a tax on business does?
It's the inheritance tax famously stops people dying.
Yeah, well,
it really works.
Imagine.
Well, stuff like that. What it can do, like capital gains tax or whatever, is make people hold on to assets in the hope that, you know, the Tories are going to get in and the tax is going to go, so then they'll sell them then. You know, the stamp duty thing clogs up the housing market. And what you should really be doing, which obviously Labour are never going to do, is slashing the state. All this stuff. The Arts Council, all these pointless PhDs, the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion departments, afuera. We don't need them. Get the money from them.
I mean, it's semantics, isn't it? It's, you know, taxing business. This is The Observer, so The Guardian. They're painting it as taxing business, which they think is good. Business bad, taxing business good. Ultimately, obviously, it's the people that get taxed. And it's a manipulation as well for me because, you know, they use the they roll the NHS out if they want to manipulate taxpayers into believing that it's a good thing. Oh, it's going to fund the NHS. When Ed Gastric Band is going around the country talking about his green madness or his carbon madness, they never talk about the NHS then. They never say, oh, we're going to spend £10 million a year to try and hit a target that's mythical, you know, like the Wizard of Oz. It doesn't exist. Yeah. It's just a little green man behind a curtain. It's all nonsense.
Yeah.
Do you think the NHS is effectively the donkey in that ITV2 advert?
Yeah.
You try and watch a bit of daytime TV and it gets you right in the feels, doesn't it? That donkey! How am I meant to not give it money? Because they show you the donkey.
Exactly what's happening.
You know, they filmed that advert about 12 years ago, so...
Oh, don't tell me what happened.
Sorry, he was in that glue.
Yeah, donkey is well dead.
Yeah.
He was in that Tesco meal deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite delicious.
Also, something else that Labour are doing is they're doing some sort of fudgy accounting. So they're changing the definition of debt, so it doesn't include our quantitative easing debts, which are obviously there because of Labour in the first place. So that means they can borrow more because they won't be breaking they're borrowing rules, but they are really.
I mean, one of the changes to that, though, is that you then get to count some of the assets that you accrue by spending from borrowing, and that kind of makes sense. Like, if you borrow loads of money and buy something that's worth something, that should be on your books.
Yeah, I guess, and also Rachel Reeves has said, she is going to invest in our infrastructure, which I guess would then have a value. Is that what you're saying? It'll have a value, so it's not, the money hasn't just gone out the window.
Yeah. And it means, like, if you borrow money to give it to students, and you instead of just see the money as a borrowing, if you lend that money to students, you technically at some point get that money back, unless it's written off, and you just have a percentage of how much you expect to reclaim. So it's keeping a record of what debts are owed to you as a government as well. Yeah, that's mixed in there, but that's sensible and boring, and that's what no one likes. But yeah, burn the place.
Big old story at the top, though. I don't know if you noticed, Steve, the secret history of crisps. I mean, I've got a not-so-secret history with crisps, which I'm willing to talk about.
You're out.
Yeah, I'm proper out.
You're out of the cupboard.
Yeah.
Right, let's take a look at the next one. Paul, we turn to the Sunday Telegraph.
We do indeed. Millions to be given NHS smartwatches. The NHS again. Smartwatches, of course, because this is part of Labour's 10-year plan. 10 years, oh my God. 10-year plan to save the health service starts with technology transformation. Look, we don't need 200 quid watches to tell people to eat less and move more. If we're going to do anything like that, let's just invent something that goes around their neck and chokes them when they get to the second pack of biscuits.
Like a shock collar.
No more, Paul. This. I get this, right? This is. I just don't think it works. I'm a member of the fat community. If you give me this watch, I'm going to sell it and buy kebabs. But that's what's going to happen here. I see this as a commodity. I can sell this on and get myself something delicious to eat. I'm not sure that this would work. Maybe it's not too dissimilar to the Ozempic thing, although the Ozempic thing is just a huge experiment. We're just going to basically poke needles into fat people and see what happens.
You're not going to hit any organs.
No, well, this is exactly it. And, do these watches fit?
You think they're going to have an extender?
like elasticated smartwatches.
Like when a fat person gets on a plane and they have to get an extra seatbelt thing. I mean, I've got one of these smartwatches. I don't know if it's made me fatter or fitter or anything, but I can tell you it's a rubbish watch. It's sort of like a watch from the old days, except you've got to charge it every few days, like a mobile phone. So it's terrible. Like watches in the old days, in the 80s, never had to charge them. You just looked at them, you could tell what the time was, and they didn't nag you about being fat. They're much better. What we really need is, when you get to the biscuit aisle in the supermarket, there's got to be some kind of narrow gap that only thin people can get through, and that'll solve the problem. So, you diet until you have earned that biscuit.
So I've got a smartwatch as well. I do like that idea, like the split experiment, but bigger than photons, just people. I like it. So I've got a smartwatch as well. Same thing, the charging's annoying, so I've been looking into buying a new one. You can get them up to 2 weeks worth of charge. Still, in the old days, you forgot your battery.
Yeah. And they've missed a trick here. Shouldn't they have kinetic smartwatches that basically charge on movement?
Yeah.
And that's how you should be able to eat as well. Put one of these things, because it's, this is what's going to happen with Labour. They're very authoritarian in a soft way. But basically, if they put something around your wrist that unless you move, you're not allowed to eat, that might work.
The kinetic charging would just be from when you're lifting pies to your face. So it'd be charged and it'd be not working.
Also,
I've been looking into it, and the one thing I do think they're good about is it's not just saying that you've not moved and how many steps you've done. They take your pulse, and if you look at the wave that happens, there's so much that you can work out about which vitamins and minerals, rather, you're deficient in by looking at the shape of the T wave and the U wave and all this stuff. So that, I'm afraid, that's probably the future. Wearable tech that actually works out if your heart's got a problem.
But enforced by government.
Well, is it enforced? If it's enforced, no. If they buy you one, I'll have that, because this one needs charging.
The doctors are barely seen anyway. You don't see a doctor. You see a paramedic called Andy who wants to look at your genitals, even though you've got toothache. And I'm not sure that this... My experience, sorry.
That wasn't a paramedic. Sorry to say it. Paramedics don't hang around in nightclubs.
That Halloween costume was worth every penny.
All right, before we get sued, let's move on to the Sunday Express, Leo. What have they got?
So the Sunday Express have blame Keir for winter OEP deaths. This is coming from Tory leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick, who's blasted the cruel Prime Minister. I'm sure Robert Jenrick would never be cruel himself if he was in power. Not at all. But yeah, I mean, he's got a great point. point, the cuts to fuel allowances for OEPs. I mean, even though I think here actually had a point doing them, it's terrible politics. And also we can see in Rachel Reeves' budget, there's no sort of payoff for the pain. It's not like when Thatcher had the market reforms and crushed the unions and introduced, you know, free markets to the British economy and like really propelled Britain forward. We're not really going to get any of that. We're just going to get the same sort of stagnation, except now some old people are going to freeze to death.
Do you not think an extra 400 quid on a state pension is a bit of payback? Because that's the amount that it's going to go up by next year.
That's not a bad point. It's not a bad point.
Next year.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is next year.
It's going to be cold in December.
But it's all about optics, isn't it? You know, this year they're going to take it away, and the first death of somebody that could have had it is going to be attributed to it. I mean, it says at the top here, I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I know that's related to something else. I assumed that was Keir Starmer talking to the elderly population of the UK.
You're right, it's an unforced error, isn't it? You've basically taken credit for deaths that would have happened anyway, even if no one would have changed anything mathematically. Deaths happen in the winter every year, and now they've made it their responsibility.
They have made their responsibility, and I think it's also true to say that there will be deaths associated to it. It's going to be very easy to prove, isn't it? You know, Mildred dies. Mildred's neighbour says Mildred couldn't afford to pay for the heating bill, so she didn't and chose, you know, to eat instead. And now she's no longer with us.
Paul, quick hit on the Daily Star Sunday. This is the story everyone's been talking
Big news,
about.
Conkergate. I know we've all been waiting for this. That's why we put it last. We're gentlemen at World Conker Championships, and we don't cheat. I've been playing and practising for years, and I know that's how I won. I'm not guilty. So this is King Conker David Jenkins was told of his joy after he was officially cleared of cheating with a stainless steel nut in a controversy that rocked the world of sport.
It was, I mean, stainless steel nut makes it sound like it's something that goes on a bolt. It will look like a Conker.
Well,
was it actually stainless steel?
Do you know, I've not checked the
could have just been regular old steel.
Certainly had iron in there, but whether it had enough carbon in there as well to make it steel...
Was there a stain?
You're right. You're right. We need more details.
Also difficult to relate to because we're not 7. We're trying to hang around with 7-year-olds.
Neither's he.
That's the point. Yeah. Why?
No, exactly. Look at him. What's he doing? Playing with his conkers in public.
Before we get sued, let's move on. You don't want to upset him. He's got a stainless steel Conker. That's the front page is done. Join us after the break for deportations, incarcerations and Kemi's impersonations. Details next.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mankoo, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees-Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, you know, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, I mean, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's, you know, it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, you know, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen, here with Leo Kearse and Paul Cox. Leo, the Mail on Sunday. It turns out we can deport foreign criminals as long as we don't have a government that messes it up. Let's find out what happened.
So, migrant thug who took part in gang killing of 18-year-old cannot be kicked out of Britain after the judge blasts the Home Office blunders that basically meant he can't be kicked out. So this is William George, who's 27 and is originally from Belgium. He was convicted of manslaughter for his part in the horrifying gang murder of Abdul Hafida. This is a sort of drug gang feud between Libyan, Somali drug gangs and Belgian gangs, possibly started by Poirot.
All of them doctors, I assume.
Yeah, all of them scholars and future engineers, as soon as they've got the killing each other part of their lives out of the way. But yeah, the Home Secretary Sajid Javid ordered that this guy, who killed the other guy, should be returned to Belgium after completing his prison sentence on imperative grounds of public security. But the judges said that he couldn't be because the Home Office had messed up the procedural, there was sort of just procedural issues that hadn't been followed properly, so they relied on a legal argument that they'd earlier abandoned in a lower court. I don't know why that means you can't use it again. I don't know, I just think we need to get much tougher on deportations for criminals. Yeah. I mean, that seems to be completely uncontroversial, and if there's some sort of, paperwork, somebody didn't properly tick the right box in the form that means that they can't be deported, I don't care. Just do it anyway. He killed a guy and he went to jail. Like, why is he? He's from Belgium. Why is he doing it? Why are the Libyan, Somali drug gangs here as well? I mean, if people are involved in drug gangs and criminality and all that sort of stuff, I think it's a good idea to deport them because it sort of sends a message to anybody else. Don't do crime stuff. Don't kill anyone, or you'll get deported. Yeah,
controversial. Don't do crime stuff.
Yeah.
I like the sound of it. Yeah, but also, I mean, it's not even that much of a flip side. Get your paperwork right. It's your one job as the Home Office to just.
I can't understand why we
right.
can't go back and just change. Like no gozy backsies is a local rule that you can't. It's become so bonkers now. Yeah. This stuff's like a wacky board game. Do
you think Saudi Arabia would have any trouble deporting this guy? They'd execute him in the town square.
Yeah, you wouldn't hear about it. Yeah, you'd just be...
No gozy backsies, I think, can legally be overdone by having crossed keys.
Yeah.
Maybe the Home Office, if they keep crossed keys.
Or if you've done a pinky promise. That could be a problem. That could be a problem.
Could look into it. Paul to the Mail on Sunday with, the councillor's wife who was jailed for her riot tweet. She's appealing. Well, if you find inciting racial hatred sexy, which Paul does.
This stuff is very on fleek for me. Tory councillor's childminder wife will appeal against 31-month jail sentence for tweeting, set fire to all the effing hotels full of the bees for all I care on the day of the Southport attacks. And this is Lucy Connolly, 41, was convicted of incitement. Now, I think that's really important. We'll get to that in a minute. Of course, this stuff was wrong, but to be convicted of incitement, you've surely, and obviously you don't have to, but in my mind's eye, you've surely got to be able to create some sort of causal link and prove it. Now, surely saying that is bad, and we all accept that it's bad, but there is no direct link.
That's not what you're saying earlier.
I know. I got my tweet down before. Yeah. But there is no direct link between what she said and what happened on the streets of Southport. It's demonstrably true that that's not the case. So it feels like a very political thing. 31 months is an excessive amount of time in prison. Yeah. Even if you don't like anything I've said so far, I'm not sure.
Especially for a mother.
Yeah, but there are a whole bunch of mitigating circumstances as well, some quite harrowing ones. You know, she lost a baby, etc., etc. Now, these things you might think, if you're on the opposite side of this argument, you might think that's all irrelevant. But if it was flipped round the other way, you'd expect those mitigating circumstances to be taken into account.
Well, yeah, and if you look at people on the other side, so, like the Nick Lowles, for example, from Hope Not Hate, who shared a horrific lie that Muslim women were being attacked with acid in Middlesbrough, which, there's footage of Muslim men clearly incited to violence by that and incited to riot by that, and he's faced no action whatsoever. He hasn't been arrested, much less charged and convicted, and he's a government advisor, so people trust him, people look to him for advice. She's a childminder. People look to her for advice on nappy rash. Nobody took this tweet from her seriously. It was just lost in the melange of angry people. And I think we've got to remember that children had been stabbed to death. She lost a child about a decade ago, a 19-month-old son, to a foreign doctor. So she, I can understand why that would be incredibly triggering for her and why she'd be angry. She saw that foreign doctor as having killed her son. That's what she said in court. And the doctor was found, the GMC did find negligence.
Yeah. All of these arguments, you speak of mitigating circumstances, all of this seems to take all the focus away from what seems to be the simple truth. No one read that and did it.
Yeah.
That's why we need to bear that in mind. And, she could have them on a technicality. She said set fire to all of the places, unless all of them were set fire to.
Only one.
Turns out, there you go. That's how the Home Office would do it, with technical paperwork. But this is the thing. A bad tweet can be a bad tweet without it being criminal, because surely no one sat there going, I'm not going to riot. Wait a minute. The councillor's wife has tweeted, I'm going to do it. Yeah. And as long as that link's never there, we don't need the rest.
We know for a fact that if her husband was a Labour councillor, she wouldn't even be, there's no way she'd be in jail right now.
Well, yeah, maybe. Leo, The Observer, if Kemi wants to win the Tory leadership race, she's been told to just don't be yourself.
So, abrasive Kemi Badenoch urged to play nice to secure Conservative leadership. Yeah, nice guys finish first in the Conservative leadership, apparently. So, she's the Shadow Communities Secretary. She had the only televised debate on GBNews last week, and most MPs believe she's still the favourite, but she's known to be uncompromising in her views and demands, having already stated during the campaign that some civil servants perform so badly they should be in prison. That's not an unreasonable request. That is just a fact. In fact, if something's going to get the civil service moving and perhaps even doing what their elected representatives have asked the civil service to do, maybe jailing some of them would be a good idea. I don't know. I think she's an actually Conservative leader, which would be a change for the Conservatives after the sort of the parade of lefty wets that we've had over the past couple of decades. So I think she could actually win, and if she doesn't,
Paul, as someone who pays the mortgage through writing topical jokes, someone who says I don't make gaffes and they made about 5, this is exactly what we need, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't believe the story. It's in The Guardian. I don't think anyone's told The Guardian that this is what they're projecting. So this is what they're thinking, they're projecting it on the public. I don't think the abrasive thing stands up to scrutiny either, on the basis that does nobody remember Margaret Thatcher? Margaret Thatcher did 10 years, 79 to 90, 11 years in power as one of the most abrasive humans to have walked, this great country's earth. And I'm not sure that we need any more wet flannels. As Leo has said, because the whole point here is we need a strong leadership. It presents a huge issue to places, to outputs like The Guardian. It presents a huge issue ideologically to Labour, because Kemi Badenoch is a black woman. And when a black woman is the opposition, and she may well be, they are not going to know what to do. They're not going to know whether to put her down or give her reparations. They are not going to know how to manage this whatsoever. And it's going to present a huge problem, particularly for The Guardian, I think, because they're going to have to be very careful.
Yeah.
Because anything negative is racism.
You can already see here that they hate, the Guardian hate a strong black woman. And that's, I mean, to me, that's intolerable sexism and racism.
They're going to have to write about themselves.
Yeah.
It's like when you look in two mirrors at once, it's going to go on forever, isn't it? Paul, the Sunday Telegraph, someone who praised the October 7th attack on Israel is to speak at a conference in London. That is wrong. They should be hosting something on the BBC.
Steve, you have changed, Steve, but I admire the change. Reporter who called October 7th moment of triumph to speak at London Muslim conference. So this is Latifa Abu Chakara, a presenter. Sorry, I did my best. A presenter at
Sound like you're trying to order something off the menu.
It does. Or maybe some sort of R&B singer from a 90s girl band. But a presenter at the band Tehran Back Channel is scheduled to speak at a seminar entitled "Palestinians Are Humans, Not Heroes" during the Global Peace and Unity Festival. I think these organisers need to be given a dictionary, because I'm not sure that the Global Peace and Unity Festival is going to be full of peace and unity. It's an interesting. There's so much to unpack here. Because this sort of thing happens time and time again. You'll see it with... Let's just take it back to what we see here on the Tube, where we can't have adverts with, you know, Ed Gamble having a sausage in a poster, but you can have adverts with sort of slightly iffy Muslim chaps advertising their business. And there seems to be a bit of a blind spot when it comes to certain aspects of certain cultural communities. And we're seeing it again here. But as far as they're concerned, and you have to, when you're reading a story like this and you're critiquing, you have to put yourself in their position. All this does is highlight how many people genuinely believe this stuff to be good, to be true. They do. There are large swathes of the community in this country that are very easily persuaded that October the 7th was a triumph.
Well, yeah, and that segment of the population that believes it is growing rapidly. So, you know, the Muslim population has grown 44% in the last decade. So that's, you know, it's almost doubling every decade. So within a couple of decades, we're going to be we're going to have a sizable Muslim majority, or, you know, a sizable minority. And also,
it does presume like linear extrapolation. That the same maths means that by like the year 20-something, everyone's Amish.
Yeah, no, everybody will be Amish. No, I mean, that's one of the good things. That's going to save.
Not how it goes.
That's going to save humanity. We're going to be living in an Amish paradise. I think Coolio did a song about it. But in this country, we're not going to have an Amish paradise. We're going to have a mixture of young people who are completely deluded and anti-Semitic and loathe Israel, and also, you know, and I'm not saying that all Muslims, you know, have these attitudes, but it's, you know, I think that antipathy towards Israel isn't a secret in the
It's also quite an acceptable point of view.
Yeah.
Very interestingly, in sort of today's environment of opinion and political opinion, there are acceptable... It's very binary, isn't it? There are acceptable and not acceptable views.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what they are, they're just deemed acceptable or not acceptable. And one of them is that October the 7th was a triumph. People who are probably ill-educated on the subject are going to feel comfortable saying it, because they will get validated by lots of people.
Yeah.
I, for one, just want to say I accept and welcome our new Amish overlords. I want to get that on record. It means the AI guy is going to do Amish.
Yes, my opinion.
Leo, to the Sunday Telegraph, how's this for balance? The last story was about anti-Semitism from someone from the Muslim faith. Now here's anti-Semitism from a Jewish person. Is this the balance you wanted? It's the balance you're getting.
So the BBC has ruled that Miriam Margolyes' Jewish and vile remark that she made on the BBC was not racist. This is the BBC kind of marking their own homework here, and this is she angered anti-Semitism campaigners with these comments that were made at the Edinburgh Fringe, which seems to be the sort of ground zero for a lot of anti-Semitism. But she was asked about a memorable Dickens character from her childhood, and Margolyes, who's 83 and Jewish, said, "Oh, Fagin, without a question, Jewish and vile." And she then said, "I didn't know Jews like that then. Sadly, I do now." That's kind of racist, surely. I mean, you know, if it's not racist, we're certainly seeing a two-tier system. I think if a white skinhead Skinhead said that, he would definitely be condemned as racist. You know, if a Conservative says it's OK to be white, they're condemned as racist. And this is, you know, playing on the stereotypes of Jews. You know, Fagan's a notoriously sort of questionable, problematic character because, you know, he looks like a you know, Jewish propaganda from the Nazi era. So yeah, this just seems to be, you know, number one, it's the BBC marking their own homework, and also it's two tiers. We've got two tiers of, you know, who's allowed to be racist and get away with it and who isn't.
But then the people have complained that there was no pushback from the interviewer, Kirsty Walk. When she said, I know Jewish people like this, is Kirsty Walk meant to say, no, you don't?
It's a real tricky one because we're all advocates of free speech, and this is the epitome of free speech, isn't it? Being able to say whatever you want. I just can't wait to get as old and as noxious as Miriam My Ghoulies, or however Liam was pronouncing it. For me, it's, you know what? OK, if you're going to rule this stuff as not racist, fair enough. OK, we can all say what we like then. And therefore, you have to accept that when other people make mistakes and they aren't Jewish...
Well, what's coming next?
And they aren't...
Oh, we're out of time in this section. It's polished off like the Pringles. Up next, we'll be talking Shakespeare and the slave trade. Uh-oh, we'll be back on it again. We'll see you in a sec.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley is arriving overnight tonight and into the start of tomorrow, bringing some wet and windy weather across much of the UK, with yellow and amber wind warnings in force for many places. Storm Ashley is situated out in the Atlantic at the moment, moving towards the UK with those very tightly packed isobars indicating those strong winds. It will start dry for most of us this evening though, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this initial rain band arriving in association with Storm Ashley, and those winds really starting to pick up, particularly along Irish Sea coast, where we could see gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. It will be quite a mild night, those temperatures holding up in the double figures, particularly in the south and the west due to all that cloud and those strong winds. In association with this rain band, we will see some particularly heavy rainfall, particularly over the high ground of southwest England, Wales, and across northern parts of England and into parts of Scotland as well. Perhaps some brightness to start with across parts of Northern Ireland as that rain band pushes its way eastwards, and the far northeast of Scotland holding on to some of those clearer skies for a time during the morning. However, with those strong winds, that rain band will push its way eastwards relatively quickly as we go through the morning on Sunday, but it's the winds in the far north that do start to pick up. Parts of western Scotland could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and in association with some high spring tides, we could see some coastal flooding in places. Turning a little drier across much of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, but definitely feeling cooler than Saturday with those strong southwesterly winds. To start on Monday, still plenty of showers around across parts of Scotland, and it will still be a windy day, though not quite as windy as Sunday afternoon. Dry for much of Wales, southwest England, but in the far southeast we do have this area of rain just pushing its way north and eastwards, bringing some wet weather through the afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the middle part of next week, but temperatures still a little above average for the time of year.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Paul, to the Sunday Telegraph, Starmer has removed another portrait from number 10. Maybe he just wanted to see more of the wallpaper. Remember, it is very expensive wallpaper.
It is indeed. Cracker of a headline as well. Starmer removes Shakespeare portrait from number 10 because it turns him on. No, I made up.
As you like.
I made up the Shakespeare portrait being removed. No, I didn't. Starmer removes Shakespeare portrait from number 10. The 18th century portrait of the bard has been taken down and placed in storage, and a move that's prompted concerns of Philistinism, what's it called?
Philistinism.
Yeah. You look up at a couple too many. But, and which means basically he's deeply, deeply closeted, I think. I'm really starting to wonder why these stories keep coming out. If he's going to take these down, I don't know why he doesn't say to people, look, I don't like any of these paintings in here. Can you not tell the media? Because they're just going to keep talking about it.
Just do it all in 1 week.
Yeah. And
stop taking them down 1 week at a time. Exactly. So we've got a new headline.
Teasing us.
Yeah. Who do you hate this week? What much loved national icon do you hate this week because you hate Britain, Mr. Starmer? Robert Jenrick has come out and said, we should stop being embarrassed by our history and our identity. No other country would behave like this, and I think that's totally right. And this there's a pomposity and a superiority attached to this sort of self-flagellation, being like, oh no, we're so virtuous that we can do this. It's like, stop doing it. Just be Shakespeare. What's possibly?
Just on the Robert Jenrick though, I think it's fair for him to say he would never take that down unless it was a painting of Mickey Mouse that a child nearby might enjoy. In which case he'd have that painted over. That definitely we know that about Jenrick, but not Shakespeare. He beats Shakespeare. Right? Do you not think that
I've forgotten all about that?
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Do you not think this story? I read this one and go like, oh, right about the winter fuel allowance. No one should give a damn about this. You get to pick the paintings, do whatever, because this is pointless, and yet winter fuel allowance is people dying.
No, this is important. This shows where Keir Starmer's heart lies. So the paintings...
We don't know which ones they've been replaced by, so we don't really
He's
know much.
put up a painting of Myra Hindley.
Yes.
No, he hasn't.
I read that.
He hasn't.
Definitely did, Steve.
He hasn't. But I mean, some of these people, I understand Margaret Thatcher and Gladstone coming down because he doesn't want to be reminded of superior politicians who did great things for this country.
Who didn't kill old people.
Walter Raleigh, Elizabeth I. I mean, come on. These are Shakespeare. These are.
Do you not think the one that number 11's worse, that Rachel Reeves is doing? She's brought in a rule that she will only have paintings of women done by women. That one is... that one. That is the correct response. Whereas the Starmer thing, I think it all happened at once and it's just the Telegraph got the info and they're leaking it one at a time. Because you shouldn't care about... This is more stuff written about this than the winter fuel allowance. No! But okay,
that's a good point, Steve.
Leo, the Observer, they say sorry seems to be the hardest word. It's not, unless you're Jonathan Ross.
So the UK will not apologise. I want to know what Jonathan Ross... Oh, because he's got a speech impediment. I thought you were suggesting he was embroiled in the P. Diddy scandal or something.
My other joke about that is about my other half finds it easy to say sorry, mainly in the sentence, all right, I'm sorry, is that what you want to hear?
Right.
But I thought it'd take too long to do.
So, talking of saying sorry, the UK will not apologise for role in slavery at Commonwealth Summit, number 10 says. So this is next week's Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit in Samoa. It's shortened to CHOGM, Commonwealth Heads of Government. And there's the news that no symbolic apology or reparations are planned that could put Starmer on collision course. This lack of apology could put Starmer on a collision course with other nations. But it's ridiculous. Britain ended slavery. Like, British soldiers died in their thousands to end slavery, to fight to end slavery. 17,000 Royal Navy seamen or soldiers, sailors, died to end it. One slaver for every 9 slaves that were freed. And we paid compensation to end slavery. And why Britain would be singled out to pay reparations and to bear the burden of the apology and responsibility for this is ridiculous. We didn't invent slavery. We might have done it in a slightly more organised fashion than certain other places, but we didn't invent slavery. We invented abolishing slavery, and I think that's something we can actually be proud of.
We know it's ridiculous because even Keir Starmer and his cabinet of wet flannels won't apologise for it. And the only people it's going to disappoint are either those people that have become so deluded by this that they think it's a good idea, or the countries that aren't going to get the reparations. And let's face it, I think they're scamming the UK to some degree. Of course these countries are going to demand reparations, but it was 300 years ago.
Yeah.
after we put a stop to it. So
it's probably not their fault. They're probably getting those calls from their, like, have you been the victim of slavery? It's not your fault. It's a PPI scam, isn't it, happening all over again? So, fair enough. Quick hit on this one, Paul. The Mail on Sunday. How is Alistair Campbell's podcast so successful? I don't know. Has it been sexed up?
I don't know if it has. I don't really watch it. But how Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart reached cult status with their podcast. Their podcast, of course, being... I don't know, of course. It's just I know because I've read it. The rest is politics, which has been around since March 2022, apparently. But this story is largely... It reads like they wrote it themselves. It really does.
Do you think Alistair Campbell knows someone in the publishing world?
It really does, because it just goes on about how they sell out venues and mainly they're very, very popular with, like, good-looking millennial women. The idea that Alistair...
It's worth pointing out that millennial women, that is the demographic group with the absolute worst opinions, the worst political opinions.
I mean, I'm laughing. I don't know why.
Like, suffragettes are spinning in their graves saying, we were wrong.
Yeah, don't give them the vote. But it's so interesting. If Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart are now the new centrist dads, I don't know where that leaves the rest of politics.
Yeah. I mean, I like the stuff he did, you know, with Iraq, you know, helping Tony Blair create all that carnage. That was wonderful, and I think, you know, he should speak about that some more. But yeah, this is, I mean, if you think his role in the Iraq War was bad, like him somehow rebranding himself as this sort of cuddly centrist figure, it's like, are you mental?
Literally...
You might as well have Pol Pot in that.
Yeah, he was Tony Blair's Joseph Goebbels, wasn't he? He was the propagandist for the Iraq War. I mean, it doesn't matter what side of politics you're on. I was a definite Labour voter at that point. But that is his history, unequivocal. And there's millennial women who are absolutely lapping it up, Steve.
You know, I know I just mentioned this to you in the break, but I might as well say it because it's funny, right? On the sister podcast, The Rest is Entertainment, one of the hosts was talking about when Naomi Campbell had to go to The Hague to talk about blood diamonds and did the joke saying, it's not the Campbell I thought would have to be called to The Hague. Like, that's a brave joke. That's a brave, you know, he's your cash cow. Yeah, brilliant. Tell you what, that's the one section done. On the way in the next one, we'll be talking drugs and Tesco's and stuff like that. Find out more next.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of... like, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer has to should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
That's what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route.
OK.
And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset.
There was a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out. Because
exactly. They had turfs on the...
turfs. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Leo, to The Observer, Kamala Harris wants to legalise cannabis to try and get votes. Good luck motivating those users to get out and vote on the day.
Yeah. So Kamala Harris promises full marijuana legalisation. Is that a game changer? In the election, the Democrat says she will end cannabis prohibition and seek to help black men profit from the industry if elected. Bit racist to assume that, black men will want to sell cannabis. But it makes a change from her time as a prosecutor when she actually locked up lots of black men, some of them apparently unfairly, for pretty minor crimes, including dealing cannabis or possession of cannabis. Trump has also hinted that he wants to legalise or decriminalise cannabis. He's supported an upcoming Florida ballot initiative that would legalise recreational cannabis. But I think this is terrible. Cannabis is probably the worst drug. It sort of, staves off boredom, but it makes you incapable of sort of filling in forms and saps all that sort of drive, the ambition. It does. Like, I've got mates who've lost their entire lives to cannabis because they can't fill in a form.
I don't know why that's tickled me, the idea of that's what did him in the end. Couldn't finish that for him. That was the problem. Look, there is a racism there, isn't it? Saying that she wants to get the votes of black men, so she'll decriminalise cannabis. That's like saying also there'll be a government plan to distribute that ass.
Well, when they go down these rabbit holes of this ideology, inevitably they pop out of a racist hole somewhere. It's what always happens.
Have you got a racist hole?
Oh, yes. And I like it to be probed. But, no, don't. You really distracted.
There's another one we should move on to before you get yourself in trouble.
I mean, Leo's absolutely right about this.
About the hole.
Yeah, about the hole. Sorry, I'm going to get the giggles in a minute. She has some sort of form of schizophrenia, I think, Kamala Harris. I don't think that's unfair to say, because she doesn't know what she believes herself, and she's got voices telling her what to say, and we don't know whether those voices are actual government officials or just in her head, because nothing she says makes much sense. If she's left to her own devices, it is complete word salad.
Yeah.
Complete word salad. And I think now it doesn't matter. None of this matters. People know who they're going to vote for in the States. There's no floating voters in the States. Yeah. It's so partisan now that she can come out and say anything. Literally anything. I'm going to shoot black men, and they would still vote for her because they're all programmed in that way. They see this as just a choice of bad and evil. You flip it round and they see exactly the same thing.
Right, Paul, the Mail on Sunday. Tesco is selling cardboard cutouts of celebs. We don't know if the Rihanna one is wiped clean, even though I've called many times. The line just goes dead after I've asked.
Tesco launches bizarre range of life-sized celebrity cardboard cutouts. The standees, as they're known, which sell for £38.99 a piece, Steve, including life-size cutouts of 3 Taylor Swift exes and high-profile politicians, including Jeremy Corbyn.
That's the politician, not...
Yeah.
Did he date Taylor Swift?
It wouldn't have... Diane Abbott, Taylor Swift, very similar. Very similar.
Everyone else in Labour has been very close to Taylor Swift.
It bemused a lot of people. They got one customer here from Portsmouth who said, I saw they had a Jeremy Corbyn and wondered if they had misspelt their slogan, every little counts.
One of the exes of Taylor Swift is Tom Hiddleston. I almost forgot about that because when they dated, he wanted to keep it low-key.
Yeah. Nice. And apparently...
I'm going to pause for that. Low-key.
I get it.
I'm with you, Steve. I do get it. It's going to make them real, mate. It'll make them real.
And interestingly, his cardboard cutout is a more engaging presence and better actor than he is.
Fair play, yeah, fair play. All right, let's crack on to the this Mail on Sunday. A woman died and wrote a book about what happens in heaven, or a woman died and wrote a book about what happens when you hallucinate as your brain shuts down. I wonder which.
Yeah, so this is an exclusive. This is a woman who died and went to heaven, and there's a surprising test you must take when you get there. I thought, this is some sort of bureaucratic nightmare. You can't escape. You can't escape from the form filling, even when you're dead. But basically,
you're on cannabis. You don't stand a chance.
Yeah, she had a stroke. She's a 43-year-old psychic medium. So I think she's already sort of geared towards, seeing something like this. But when she was semi-conscious and unable to communicate clearly, she could hear what her family were saying. She said it was terrifying. She could hear the nurse telling her kids, say everything you want now to your mothers. You won't get to see her again. They say mom here because it's America, but they mean mother. And she was taken in a helicopter somewhere. And then the test is basically, there was like spectral beings or whatever who said, you know, if you want to go back to your children, they gave her a choice and she chose to go back. But she said when she was dead, she was experiencing all this joy and could see everybody, and it sounded quite nice. But still, don't do it.
Is that really a test? I thought it was going to be, you know, at the most, like chicken or fish.
You know how many times I had to read this to try and find the test? And then I found out that was the test.
Yeah, exactly. I read it twice for exactly the same reason. It's not a test, is it? Because there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if she just went, nah, they'll be all right, I'm staying here, it's lovely jubbly up here. She hasn't failed the test, she's got heaven.
So she's
made a choice.
And none of it is real, because she's making all this stuff up.
Steve,
oh, look at Steve. Not a spiritual man.
Very controversial, Steve.
Is it that controversial?
Yeah, there are people out there that think it is, mate, and...
just because
you're such a cold, hard rationalist.
Yep.
Yeah, facts get in the way.
Speaking of which, let's wrap this one up. The show's nearly over. Let's take a quick look at your front pages. The Observer. Reeves will tax businesses to plug £9 billion gap in NHS funds. The Mail on Sunday. Voters. We don't trust Labour with our money. The Sunday Telegraph says millions to be given NHS smartwatches. Sunday Times, leaked papers reveal chaos at heart of HS2. Remember that? The Eye, income tax set to rise for millions past 2028. And the Sunday Mirror, I'm sorry I couldn't save you. That's it for tonight's show. Thanks to my guests Leo Kearse and Paul Cox. Josh Howie will be here tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Kerry Marks and Leo Kearse as well. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay exactly where you are. Breakfast is on the way for you next. And until the next one, have yourself a good one.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley is arriving overnight tonight and into the start of tomorrow, bringing some wet and windy weather across much of the UK, with yellow and amber wind warnings in force for many places. Storm Ashley is situated out in the Atlantic at the moment, moving towards the UK with those very tightly packed isobars indicating those strong winds. It will start dry for most of us this evening though, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this initial rain band arriving in association with Storm Ashley, and those winds really starting to pick up, particularly along Irish Sea coast, where we could see gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. It will be quite a mild night, those temperatures holding up in the double figures, particularly in the south and the west due to all that cloud and those strong winds. In association with this rain band, we will see some particularly heavy rainfall, particularly over the high ground of southwest England, Wales, and across northern parts of England and into parts of Scotland as well. Perhaps some brightness to start with across parts of Northern Ireland as that rain band pushes its way eastwards, and the far northeast of Scotland holding on to some of those clearer skies for a time during the morning. However, with those strong winds, that rain band will push its way eastwards relatively quickly as we go through the morning on Sunday, but it's the winds in the far north that do start to pick up. Parts of western Scotland could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and in association with some high spring tides, we could see some coastal flooding in places. Turning a little drier across much of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, but definitely feeling cooler than Saturday with those strong southwesterly winds. To start on Monday, still plenty of showers around across parts of Scotland, and it will still be a windy day, though not quite as windy as Sunday afternoon. Dry for much of Wales, southwest England, but in the far southeast we do have this area of rain just pushing its way north and eastwards, bringing some wet weather through the afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the middle part of next week, but temperatures still a little above average for the time of year.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway.